Bakit iba ang advice ng bawat doktor sa kanilang mga pasyente when it comes to nutrition and diet? First, I want to emphasize na wala pong doktor na gustong ipahamak ang kanyang pasyente. But as humans as we are, meron po kaming biases based on our own experience and of course, the things that we believe in. When it comes to diet, iba-iba po yung advice namin. It's because iba-iba yung pangangailangan ng bawat pasyente. As an example, I will tell you my experience as a surgeon about cleft lip and palate. Yung cleft lip and palate o yung bingot po ay marami pong classifications yan. And depende po sa classifications ay iba't iba rin yung technique kung paano yan ooperahan. For example, for cleft palate alone, meron tayong more than 10 types of surgical techniques. Ito yung von Lagenbeck, Vaux-Wardell-Kilner pushback technique, yung Bardak's two-flap technique, furlough double opposing Z-plasty, two-stage palatal repair, hole-in-one repair, raw area free palatoplasty, alveolar extension palatoplasty, primary pharyngeal flap, intravelar veloplasty, vomer flap, and buccal myomucosal flap. And iba rin po yung mga technique na para sa cleft lip. And it will depend on the surgeon's experience and expertise kung ano yung mas nakasanayan niya dito at kung ano yung nakita niyang effective para sa kanya and sa kanya mga pasyente. Similarly with diet, especially para sa mga may diabetes, ay ang American Diabetes Association po ay naglabas na din ng kanilang mga recommended diet for patients with diabetes. And the managing physician, hindi lang po basta diabetologist or endocrinologist or nutritionist, but general healthcare provider can actually provide these options para piliin ng pasyente at sila mismo ang makaka-decide kung ano yung pinakamaganda para sa kanila dito. In April 19, 2019, the American Diabetes Association published these nutritional guidelines, and the types of diet that are recommended would include, first, the USDA Dietary Guidelines for Americans, Mediterranean style, meron ding vegetarian or vegan, meron ding low fat, meron ding very low fat, merong low carbohydrate diet, merong very low carbohydrate diet, merong dietary approach to stop hypertension or the DASH diet, and also meron ding paleo diet. So lahat ng ito ay pwedeng options. But when it comes to our experience, not just as a physician focusing on root cause medicine, but also as a person who grew up with a strong family of diabetes and my own father who died of diabetes complications only at the age of 56, even complying to the standard diabetic diet and consistently taking his medications and his insulin injections, we have now seen that only low-carb nutrition o yung pagkain na pinapababa yung carbohydrate intake together with nutrient-dense foods tulad ng non-starchy carbohydrates and nutritious proteins and healthy fats is the most sustainable. We will make a video about why we choose this over the others. But for now, know that this is our stand. My personal stand is I believe that for those who are maintaining on a normal diet but doesn't seem to feel like improving, then we suggest that low-carb nutrition could be an option. So, hindi namin ito ini-impose sa kung sino man, but we lay this down as an option together with other low-carb practitioners in the country wherein we emphasize lowering carbohydrates to lower the need for insulin and eventually lower the insulin resistance and make the person insulin sensitive again. And just like in operating cleft lip and palate, I also have my own favorite. I usually do the furlough double opposing Z-plasty for cleft palate, and for the lip would be the Millard technique for cleft lip. So yun lang po muna for now. I'll see you again in our next video. Stay low carb so that we all stay safe.
Hello everybody! Good evening! Na-miss nyo ba kami ni Loki? So, nandito ngayon si Loki Boy right behind me. And we are expecting a very important guest tonight. And I'm sure, no, kayo mismo is excited din. Actually, kaming lahat is super excited din po for this episode. Because this is a very good supplemental episode in addition sa ating previous topic, which was carnivore with Sir Zarius and Daya. And to supplement with that, we invited another guest. So she is a lawyer by profession and meron po siyang background on economics. So don't worry kung meron sa inyo. I know marami sa inyo yung nag-iisip na it could be expensive, it's not for everyone, especially sa normal, sa average Filipino worker na medyo malaki po yung gagastusin if you go carnivore. But let's hear it from the other side kasi we already we explored already the many sides of low carb and even vegetarian and vegan low carb. For those of you who have been following the page since 2019, alam niyo po na on 2020, actually, kami ni Mami mismo also tried doing plant-based low carb. We planned on doing 2 weeks, 14 days, pero we stopped at around day 10. Not because hindi namin kaya yung pagkain. Actually, the food is really good. Sobrang sarap. Especially na alam nyo naman na very creative tayo when it comes to kitchen and making food really sumptuous. So, nakaya naman when it comes to yung importance ng variety and also yung panlasa nga. So, masarap kung sa masarap lang. But what stopped us is already the bloating. So we experienced bloating and not just gaining of weight, hindi lang basta like tumaba o ano in that 10 days time, but we actually experienced bloating talaga in our bellies and most importantly, yung pag-recur ng mga allergies for me. Maming doesn't have any allergies, but for me, it was the allergies. For her, the signs of inflammation is mostly aches and pains. But meron na kukunin niyo na si Loki Boy. Sige, kunin niyo muna si Loki Boy. Okay, so yun lang naman yung mga hindrances. And as you can see in our post, no, we are largely parang somewhat almost carnivore. Although hindi talaga 100% carnivore because from time to time, we eat some vegetables if it's there. Yun nga, yung mga coconut flour, almond flour for our waffles. And also, meron ding maraming mga certain nuts. We love nuts and seeds. Kahit we limit it to 2 to 3 times a week, but still, we eat some of those every now and then. So, yun yung mga little things na nakakain natin and that's why generally hindi talaga kami nakaka-completely full carnivore. But we will hear it from Attorney Astra Conlu who actually, to give you a background, is meron na siyang history of practicing vegetarian as a way of life for 20 years. So, for 20 years, ay yun po yung kanyang kinakain, especially that she is into yoga and also yung kanyang ang kanyang community is also very supportive na kahit hindi man hindi man vegetarian yung way ng pagkain ng kanyang husband, but very supportive of her. And also, meron na ding importante na meron tayong transition. Kasi Attorney Astra, yung sa kanyang history, based on her interview before with Sean Baker, ay marami pala siyang experiences na kahit yung sabi niya na very clean eating na lahat daw ng superfoods, nakakain na ni Attorney Astra, lahat ng flaxseed, quinoa, ano pa ba, mga spinach, green tea, special mention ata yung green tea doon, and also meron mga, ano pa ba, mga chia seeds, and all of those na even in low carb, parati naman yung kinakain. So, let's see. We will see this other side, kumbaga, ng ating story of low carb because carnivore is just a subset of low carb. So, low carb, yun yung isa sa nagiging, sabi natin, it's quite sustainable. Kasi nga, hindi ito basta low carb lang. It's not that restrictive. If you want, merong low carb vegetarian, merong low carb vegan, merong low carb Mediterranean, okay? Pwede kang mag low carb na Korean. We have friends in Korea, living in South Korea right now, who is practicing low carb with Korean dishes. Meron tayong friends, we have Chloe from Japan, no, na practicing low carb while still eating Japanese. And of course, no, Filipino low carb. We have Life Without Rice as ating pinaka-grupo natin na wherein we share recipes, we share menus, no, na mga food inspirations kung ano ba yung low carb. So, carnivore diet is a subset of low carb. It is more on those na strict talaga wherein yung kinukuha lang na pagkain is halos nga zero carb yon, because pure carnivore is mostly made of proteins and fats, although like an egg, one whole egg, meron niyang 1 gram of carbohydrates. So, hindi talaga siya totally zero carbs, but those are negligible at hindi naman natin na kailangan talaga to be very strict about the definition. But so, it is important na alam natin na we are sticking to what's low carb. So, we are waiting for Attorney Astra to come in. Meron lang pong one stream live and then naghahanap na po siya. No, she will be with us in a short while. Okay, so as for the meantime, if you have questions, we will try to answer them. Okay? So, sa ngayon, I would like to say hi to everybody. Maraming salamat po for those of you who are always watching. Very, very excited na talaga, no? So, ano lang natin? Technical support muna tayo to TL app. Importante lang po na nandito tayo ngayon and we will see Attorney Astra in a short while. For now, say hi to everyone. Saka si Mitch, sabi niya, "Good evening, Doc. Pinipilit ko husband na panoorin. Lalo na mega live stream mo. Kasi sa bahay ako lang po naglo-low carb and keto ngayon, carnivore na. Majority sa bahay, puro high carbs. At last week, pinapanood ko yung live collab with Doc Fee about insulin. Grabe, biglang natauhan ang asawa ko. So, sometimes, kailangan talaga, no, na merong mga certain episodes or certain posts na dun talaga tayo mapupukaw. So, merong mga ganong mga instances. So, it's different for everyone. So, carnivore, yung isa sa carnivore, it's just, I think, no, kung hindi man kayo magiging full carnivore, yung pinaka-takeaway, at least hindi man lang kayo matakot sa meat. Hindi kayo matakot sa red meat. Na kung meron man tayong dapat talagang katakutan, it's actually the carbs, okay? It's actually the sugar and the carbs na kailangan talaga nating katakutan. And we know that sugar is bad. But don't you know na merong hidden sugars? So, yung hidden sugars po, yun nakikita natin sa halos lahat ng mga pagkaing naka-wrap na or naka-plastic na. Okay? So, yung importante dito, we understand. So, before we move on to our carnivore, I'm sure na meron pa rin dito na mga medyo na-confuse pa din kung ano ba yung mga carbs. So, yung carbs po is simply carbohydrate. Okay? So, yung carbohydrate, tatlo yung major types of carbohydrates. It's the sugar, okay, or the simple sugars. Meron din po tayong fibers and merong starch. Okay? So, kung gusto nyong maging very technical about it, okay, pwede siyang maging, mga monosaccharide, disaccharide, polysaccharide, and all those. So, pero for functional uses kailangan natin sila i-identify na yung ating mga monosaccharide or simple sugars, hindi lang po ito glucose lang. Pwede itong fructose, pwedeng lactose, pwedeng galactose, okay? Pwedeng dextrose, okay? So, these are different types of simple sugars na merong tinatawag nating energy equivalent. So, yung ginagawa mostly ng mga food manufacturing na companies, they put zero sugar, zero added sugar. But they are saying na zero sugar, pero yung total net carbs pala o yung amount of carbohydrates that is still translatable into energy, into calories, into insulin na impact, no? Ay pwede pa rin mas marami kaysa sa sugar. So, an example would be this, no? Kilala nyo to. So, takpan natin, ha? So, this is kilalang ng lahat ito. So, for example, yung ganyan, kung nakikita nyo dyan, it's quite blurry. Pero, yung nakikita nyo, yung isang pack nito, ay merong 36 grams. 36, nandito sila ngayon kasi we are actually about to make a video about it. So, pero for you, papakita ko na lang. So, per pack of this, merong 36 grams of total carbohydrates. Okay? So, yung total carbohydrates niyan, yun yung actually yung total. So, kailangan natin malaman kung may fiber, kung ilan yung starch, ilan yung sugar. Kasi kailangan natin malaman kung saan yung hidden sugar. So yung hidden sugar po, yung pinaka-common na hidden sugar are actually starch. Okay? At dito yung nagagalit yung iba nating mga kasamahan sa food industry and others who are practicing nutrition na ayaw nilang gawing synonymous yung starch with sugar. Totoo nga naman, magkaiba naman sila. By structure, yung sugar is fructose and glucose, pero yung starch is glucose. And glucose alone, yun din yung pinapababa natin sa ating blood sugar. So, hindi na natin kailangan mag-argue on how to go technical about it. But what is important is, yung importante dito is for us to realize that whether it's starch or it is glucose, pareho pa rin sila na makakapagpataas ng blood sugar. So, going back to this, no? Yung 36 grams po nito, 36 grams nito, yung dietary fiber is 0. Meaning, wala siyang dietary fiber. Kasi, kapag meron sanang, kung meron sanang fiber, mamaminus sana dyan. So, for example, gawin natin example to, ha? So, this is our nutrition facts, okay? So, calories, merong nakalagay dyan, total fat, sodium, cholesterol. So, for the purpose of knowing what is net carb, dito tayo magpo-focus sa total carb. So, for example, sa pack ng pansit canton na ito, okay, we can put here na ang total carbs niya ay 36. Okay? So, 36 ang kanyang total carbohydrates. And then, kapag yung 36 na total carbohydrates, ima-minus mo doon yung fiber. Kasi yung fiber, hindi yun na-translate into direct energy. Na-ferment lang yan sa ating tiyan. So, yung fiber niya is 0. Okay? So, wala siyang fiber. So, wala tayong kailangang i-deduct. Tapos, yung sugar niya is 2. Okay? So, kung hindi mo alam kung paano mag-compute ng net carbs, sasabihin mo na, uy, 2 lang pala yung ating sugar dito. So, okay lang. Low sugar. Baka pwede sa diabetes to. Pero, yung ibig sabihin po niyan, kung yung 2 na ito ay ang 2 ay sugar out of 36, so you still have 34. Okay? So, ano yung 34 grams na ito? Okay? So, this 34 grams is actually starch. Mostly starch. At yung pagkatapos ng starch po, alam niyo po kung anong starch? Starch is still glucose kapag na-breakdown na po ng ating katawan. So this is what we call as the 34 is the hidden sugar plus the 2 that is really sugar. So actually, all of these 36 grams are all translatable into net carbs of sugar. Okay? So yun po yung pinaka-importante whenever we check the labels. Kaya with carnivore, no? With carnivore actually, wala kayong kailangan iisipin. Because with carnivore, hindi nyo kailangan magbilang because carnivore is not processed, okay? We want to emphasize na whenever we say na some of us are into carnivore, hindi po kasama dito yung mga processed red meats. Kasi yung iba is dinidistort nila yung ating storyline wherein yung carnivore, yung sinasabi nila nakakakos ng cancer, nakakakos ng pagsira ng kidney, those carnivores, yun yung mga processed meats, yung sobrang taas sa nitrites, sobrang taas sa mga MSG at kung ano-ano pang mga emulsifiers at kung ano-ano pang marami pang mga extenders and preservatives na yun po yung nakakakos ng cancer. But meat alone, red meat alone, isolated, not paired with carbohydrates, not paired with sugar, not paired with sodas, with junk foods, so far wala po tayong ganong nakikitang effect. Okay? So those are very, very biased talaga. So importante po na we understand that, and when it comes to carnivore eating, yung pinaka-importante dito is you know why you are doing it. Okay? So each of us is maraming rason, no? Maraming iba na nakatry na ng maraming diet, naka-low carb, naka-Atkins, naka-ano pa yon, Cohen, okay, marami nang nakaganon, marami na rin yung mga elimination diet with autoimmune, but not really looking into carnivore. And this episode might just open up a few doors, no, for you to consider na kahit nga hindi man kayo maging full carnivore, but maybe you can see how it can possibly improve you as well. So I would like to say hi, no, to Sir Zarius and Daya, yung guest speaker natin last week, who opened up the carnivore topics and then paved the way for this episode then. So we are just waiting for Attorney Astra. If ever hindi po makapasok si Attorney Astra in our StreamYard, maybe we can transfer later in Facebook Live para po mas madali po doon. If ever mamaya-maya. So let's give her around 7 minutes before 6:30 para maipasok po natin. But for now, I hope you are all well. Once a week na lang po tayo ngayon sa ating live. We will still have 2 more live episodes. And don't worry, mga special po yung remaining Mondays natin for all of you to really learn something about, no? So, thank you so much sa lahat. Si Sir Zarius is educating us, our groups, no? Stearic acid as saturated fats we need in our cells. It helps diabetic person to infuse mitochondria. Okay, so that can sound very technical, but it really means that it can help with your metabolism. Kasi yung mga diabetic po, nakikita na meron na silang problem in their mitochondria. Yung mitochondria, isa siyang specific part ng cells natin wherein sila yung in charge ng pag-breakdown ng glucose or fats into energy. And yung pag-intake po ng stearic acid, which is very common in beef fats, no? Yung beef tallow, at saka yung fat na nasa kidney. Is it the ano po ba, sir? The adrenal glands ng beef? O ano nga po yung sabi nyo, yung parang cap po ng ating kidneys ng beef? Those are really good sources of fat. So, okay lang po yung diet na ito, especially with GERD. Okay? Yes, pwede po yan because GERD is brought about by inflammation. And we have various studies now. Marami na pong studies that are really showing na yung ating low carb nutrition is inflammatory lowering kind of diet. And that's why we maintain it as a lifestyle. Hindi lang po basta diet lang. Kasi yung importante po dyan is sustainable ito. Nalulungkot kami kapag meron kaming naririnig na after 3 months, kapag na-normal na daw yung kanilang HbA1c, na-normal na daw yung kanilang laboratories, ay babalik na sila agad sa previous nilang way of eating. So, those are really disheartening. Kasi, bakit ka pa babalik? So, merong nagbigay ng analogy dyan, no? So, kung meron daw ilog malapit sa inyo, tapos sobrang dumi na, okay, kasi tinatambakan ng basura, and then you decided, no, nalinisin ito, and lo and behold, sobrang malinis na siya. And now, na nakita mo ng malinis na siya, okay lang ba sa'yo na dudumihan mo ito ulit? So that's basically the same thing. When you do low carb, you cleansed your body, you made it into yung sinasabi ng iba na hindi siya sustainable. So far, I've been in this way of life for almost 3 years now. At marami tayong kakilala. Yung longest atang practicing is actually Dr. Iris Radev. Si Doc Iris, more than 10 years na siyang naglo-low carb. Although before, hindi siya labeled as low carb. She's just eating clean. And her way of eating clean is really low carb. And also, we have Sir Alan Cura. So, admin natin yan sa LCFF and sa Life Without Rice, no? Practicing low carb for 12 years na ata ngayon. So, it's not about being sustainable. Sustainability will also comes with the right mindset. Kung hindi tama yung mindset ninyo, hindi po talaga kayo makaka-sustain sa ating lifestyle. So, I'll hook in Doc Iris, I'll hook in Attorney Astra, but for now, commercial lang muna tayo sandali about diabetes nutrition, okay? Stay tuned. In 5 minutes, we'll be
Bakit
back.
iba't iba ang advice ng bawat doktor sa kanilang mga pasyente when it comes to nutrition and diet? First, I want to emphasize na wala pong doktor na gustong ipahamak ang kanyang pasyente. But as humans as we are, meron po kaming biases based on our own experience and of course, the things that we believe in. When it comes to diet, iba-iba po yung advice namin. It's because iba-iba yung pangangailangan ng bawat pasyente. As an example, I will tell you my experience as a surgeon about cleft lip and palate. Yung cleft lip and palate o yung bingot po ay marami pong classifications yan. And depende po sa classifications ay iba't iba rin yung technique kung paano yan ooperahan. For example, for cleft palate alone, meron tayong more than 10 types of surgical techniques. Ito yung von Lagenbeck, Vaux-Wardell-Kilner pushback technique, yung Bardak's two-flap technique, furlough double opposing Z-plasty, two-stage palatal repair, hole-in-one repair, raw area free palatoplasty, alveolar extension palatoplasty, primary pharyngeal flap, intravelar veloplasty, vomer flap, and buccal myomucosal flap. And iba rin po yung mga technique na para sa cleft lip. And it will depend on the surgeon's experience and expertise kung ano yung mas nakasanayan niya dito at kung ano yung nakita niyang effective para sa kanya and sa kanya mga pasyente. Similarly with diet, especially para sa mga may diabetes, ay ang American Diabetes Association po ay naglabas na din ng kanilang mga recommended diet for patients with diabetes. And the managing physician, hindi lang po basta diabetologist or endocrinologist or nutritionist, but general healthcare provider can actually provide these options para piliin ng pasyente at sila mismo ang makakadecide kung ano yung pinakamaganda para sa kanila dito. In April 19, 2019, the American Diabetes Association published these nutritional guidelines, and the types of diet that are recommended would include, first, the USDA Dietary Guidelines for Americans, Mediterranean style, meron ding vegetarian or vegan, meron ding low fat, meron ding very low fat, merong low carbohydrate diet, merong very low carbohydrate diet, merong dietary approach to stop hypertension or the DASH diet, and also meron ding paleo diet. So lahat ng ito ay pwedeng options. But when it comes to our experience, not just as a physician focusing on root cause medicine, but also as a person who grew up with a strong family of diabetes and my own father who died of diabetes complications only at the age of 56, even complying to the standard diabetic diet and consistently taking his medications and his insulin injections, we have now seen that only low-carb nutrition o yung pagkain na pinapababa yung carbohydrate intake together with nutrient-dense foods tulad ng non-starchy carbohydrates and nutritious proteins and healthy fats is the most sustainable. We will make a video about why we choose this over the others. But for now, know that this is our stand. My personal stand is I believe that for those who are maintaining on a normal diet but doesn't seem to feel like improving, then we suggest that low-carb nutrition could be an option. So, hindi namin ito ini-impose sa kung sino man, but we lay this down as an option together with other low-carb practitioners in the country wherein we emphasize lowering carbohydrates to lower the need for insulin and eventually lower the insulin resistance and make the person insulin sensitive again. And just like in operating cleft lip and palate, I also have my own favorite. I usually do the furlough double opposing Z-plasty for cleft palate, and for the lip would be the Millard technique for cleft lip. So yun lang po muna for now. I'll see you again in our next video. Stay low carb so that we all stay safe.
It's like 99% of the people in the world, we are brainwashed that sugar is okay. Sugar can be eaten as part of the dietary guidelines. However, we should think twice.
Hi, my name is Dr. Josephine Grace Rojo, also known as your Diet Doctora. I have written books mainly focusing on health and wellness. So this coming June, we are going to conduct an LCF masterclass, a low carb and fasting masterclass. But this time, it will be different because we will tackle 12 kinds of the most common lifestyle diseases na pwede po nating mai-improve using only natural remedies and of course, the knowledge on nutrition and incorporation of fasting. So, ano po ang i-expect natin sa 21 days LCF Masterclass? So, each disease ay magkakaroon po ng kanyang sariling private group sa Facebook. At kapag naka-enroll na at natapos ang registration process ng isang participant, siya po ay magiging member ng isang exclusive group and at the same time, exclusive community na ito. For the next 21 days, magkakaroon ng available na 20 to 25 minutes of video na merong learning at meron din itong kasabay na habit-forming activities and exercises so that pagkatapos po sa 21 days ng bawat sakit ay hindi lang po magiging equipped sa knowledge yung participant when it comes to disease prevention, kung paano posibleng pigilan, kung paano ito pwedeng maiwasan, and lastly, kung paano ito pwedeng mai-avoid. So, our first disease is actually on diabetes. So, yung diabetes po ay yung pagtaas ng blood sugar ng abnormal na level sa tao at ito po ay nagkakaroon ng maraming komplikasyon tulad ng sakit sa kidneys, sakit sa puso, pagtaas ng cholesterol. Diabetes is basically destroying all organs of the human body. And with this 21-day masterclass, we aim to provide you with the knowledge, yung kaalaman, at of course, the practice and also the confidence na pwede pong simulan ang ating lifestyle change ng safe and natural for us to attain good health. And
remember, our ultimate goal ay hindi lang po basta optimum health, but also longevity. Ang longevity po ay maa-attain na kahit sa katandaan o advanced age, we still have the energy. Meron pa rin tayong stamina at lakas tulad ng kabataan. So I hope to see you in our upcoming masterclass, and if you wish to know more, meron na pong details sa video na ito, and I hope that you will be a part of this community na hindi lang po matatapos in the coming 21 days, but is going to be a long-term support group para po sa mga sakit na ito. See you! Hello everybody, we are back and finally, nandito na po si Attorney Astra. I know you're already very excited and let's welcome our dearest, pinakamamahal natin kahit ngayon pa lang natin siya na-meet, Attorney Astra Conlu. Hello Attorney!
Magandang gabi sa iyo, Doktora, at magandang gabi sa mga nanonood.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your very beautiful presence and very glowing. I'm sure maraming masa-starstruck dyan. So thank you so much, Attorney. So yeah, I already made some introduction about you and they're already dying to hear your story. Can you tell us? I know, medyo marami ka na. I've read a lot of features and even in our national newspaper nga, na-feature ka na doon in one of the lifestyle sections before. So, medyo pabalik-balik na siguro ang testimonial na ito. But I hope it's okay with you to share us your journey. How did it all started? So, as we know from our previous post, galing vegetarian. Ano po ba yung kwento ninyo when you started?
Okay. I'm 49 years old now. And I've been on the carnivore diet for 5 years. Just to give you a background, I grew up on the standard follicular diet, which is based on carbohydrates, particularly rice. So a typical day would look like sa almusal, sinangag at pritong itlog. Sa tanghalian, rice at sinigang na bangus. Sa hapunan, rice again at tinolang manok. So every now and then, we would also eat dinuguan, papaitan, bopis, isaw, pero palaging may kasamang rice. Growing up, I was fairly healthy. But just like every other kid, I would get some kind of infection every so often. There was not a year that passed that I did not get any kind of sickness. I was very prone to sore throat, and I grew up struggling with sinusitis. Then I got into yoga and I became vegetarian. So at this point, my dietary intake consisted mostly of um, a lot of oatmeal at matatamis na prutas. Mahilig ako sa mga saging, papaya, mangga. And I ate a lot of low-fat yogurt at pandesal with peanut butter. My source of protein was, plant-based. Monggo, legumes, tokwa, taho. I also eat a lot of mga yung mga Filipino kakanin, yung mga matatamis gaya, yung mga bilibiloy, mga cassava cake and suman. And this stage of my health journey lasted for 20 years. So it was a very high carbohydrate, low fat, plant-based vegetarian diet. And all throughout these 20 years, I never felt healthy. There was always that underlying, low energy and general malaise. I had several health issues. I had sleep problems, I had digestion issues, but the most prominent one was the fainting spells. Later on, I was diagnosed with severe anemia. To each point, the doctor who did my full blood work recommended bone marrow transplant. That was my wake up call. I took stock of my health and started reading up on nutrition. The China study by Dr. Colin Campbell, the starch solution by Dr. John McDougall, the reverse heart disease book by Dr. Esselstyn, and the famous book by Michael Pollan, The Omnivore's Dilemma. And also the books by Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. John Greger, the How Not to Die book. And all throughout these books, the running theme was to stay away from animal foods and especially red meat and to go plant-based. So I followed the recommendation to the letter and I also started supplementing iron. So my next blood work, it was a little better. My health improved a little. At least I was no longer a candidate for bone marrow transplant. But I was still having the fainting spells. It was happening usually around my period. And then eventually I got married and we were able to conceive a child right away. We had a honeymoon baby. And we wanted to have, more children. At that point, I started struggling with fertility. I developed endometriosis and I suffered two miscarriages. And so I looked into my diet and tried to improve it. All the authoritative nutritionists recommend going plant-based. So what I did was to incorporate more plant-based foods to my diet until I eventually turned fully vegan or 100% plant-based. So I dropped the yogurt and other animal-derived food that I was still eating. So at that point, my daily food intake would consist of a lot of spinach, kale, malunggay, lettuce. I would make a green smoothie out of them, add soy milk or almond milk and cacao powder, maca powder, ground up flax seeds, ground up chia seeds, turmeric, all the superfoods that I could get my hands on. And you know how a vegan diet is not really so satiating. I mean, you're hungry all the time. I had to eat more than 6 times a day. Like after 2 hours, I was hungry again. I was constantly eating. So in between meals, I would drink green tea. And then in the evening, I had to eat like sweet potato just so that I wouldn't go to bed feeling hunger. So it was a constant struggle with the hunger, with the constant hunger and the lack of satiety. And then I noticed that when I switched from a vegetarian diet to a fully vegan diet, my health deteriorated. So on top of my fertility issues and fainting spells, I started developing severe eczema on my hand. It was, an obvious part of the body, and you could actually see pus coming out of the skin and turning into a crust. It was a blistering skin condition, and it motivated me to look into the root cause of my health issues. So I religiously logged down every food item that I ate. I created a food diary. Every food item I ate every day and how it affected my health issues. And over a course of months, I noticed that there were just slight variations in what I ate. So elimination didn't of those foods didn't really impact much. But there was one thing that was consistent all throughout every day. That I was intaking. And it was the least food that I suspected because it started to be a very health promoting food, supposedly full of antioxidants. And it turned out to be green tea that was triggering my severe eczema. So I got that out of my diet, but I still stuck to my vegan, 100% plant-based diet. At this point, my other health issues were piling up. So I was seeing boils in different parts of my body. I was having, for the first time in my life, tinnitus or ringing in my ears. And I was having chronic infections. I had fungal infections, fungal toenail fungus, and eye sty. It was like on and off. I had eye infections, and the worst part was the excruciating back pain and arthritic hips, achy joints, and painful wrists, which affected my quality of life. I had to stop yoga. And at this point, this was already the end stage of my vegetarian and vegan journey. Out of the blue, I started craving meat, which was quite a shock to me because I never really enjoyed meat. That's why it was very easy for me to go vegetarian and vegan because I really had a very strong sweet tooth. I'd rather eat something sweet, and I couldn't care less for meat. But maybe at that point, accumulation of 20 years as a vegetarian and 1 year as a vegan, my body was starved of nutrition and crying out for nourishment. But I did not, I resisted eating meat because I had that thinking that meat causes cancer, heart disease. There is a very negative association with meat. You would never see, a book on nutrition that would recommend eating red meat. That's like, it's always go plant-based and avoid animal foods, especially red meat. So I was very cautious, even though my body was crying out for it. That's why I only started first with eggs and, some fish, and then some chicken, and then eventually pork, and then beef. But all throughout this time, I was still eating plant-based foods, low carbohydrate vegetables, like asparagus, broccoli. You may describe this stage of my health journey as my low carb stage. You know, um, if I could describe it, one half of my plate would consist of the animal based food, and the other half would be the plant based food. So, even though at this point I was thoroughly enjoying the taste of meat for the first time in my life, and to my own surprise, it was really very satisfying, and I really would rather just eat that by itself. But I was still eating the vegetables out of, I don't know, security perhaps, or like a guarantee, because I was operating under that mindset that I might have a nutritional deficiency, or I might get scurvy. I mean, where would I get vitamin C? And what about fiber? I might get constipated. So I was just, eating the plant-based food as a token vegetable. Um, and what I noticed when it comes to my health, um, as soon as I introduced the animal-based foods, even starting with the eggs, the fish, the chicken, the pork, and the beef, the moment I introduced animal-based foods, my health dramatically improved. For one, I no longer experience any fainting spell. I've never had a single fainting spell since that moment when I added in uh, animal-based foods to my daily food intake. And my other health issues also became less in terms of intensity. They were still there. They were lingering. The backache, the back pain, the painful wrists, the achy joints, the arthritic hips. They were still there, but to a very minimal extent, almost tolerable. And my infections were also getting less and less. The toenail fungus, the eye style, the boils, the tinnitus were even getting less and less, fewer and far between. So at that point, I could have stopped because I was very happy with my health improvement. It was something that I could live with. It felt to me like a sustainable life because, my thought process was it was a very healthy diet. One half of my plate was animal based and the other half was plant based. You know, and it was giving me a remarkable, significant improvement in my health. I could have just stopped there and continued with that. But then, there was this experience with my little experiment with green tea and eczema. The total elimination of green tea resulted in complete resolution of my severe eczema without any drugs, without any medicine, without any medical intervention, just removal or elimination of the offending food, which turned out to be green tea. So at the back of my mind, I had that suspicion that the lingering health issues that were still bothering me, although to a significantly less extent, was most likely due to this plant-based foods that I was still incorporating in my animal-based diet at the time, the low-carb phase of my health journey. So just out of curiosity, and also because I have that burning desire to feel my best. We all have that desire to, if it's possible, if there's a way to do it, then why not? If there's a way to live our best life in our best body, at our best health, I mean, why not? And it doesn't cost a thing. It doesn't involve drugs. It doesn't involve any supplements or anything like that. Just tweaking your diet, fine tuning it, and just out of curiosity, let's see what happens. So the same thing that I did with the green tea and eczema, I removed all the token vegetables, the remaining vegetables in my diet. So the asparagus, the broccoli, everything, I removed them. And I distinctly remember that moment when I sat down to a meal of nothing but steak, no side dish, no vegetable. It I was very aware that it seemed so weird to be eating that way. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. Just sit down to a meal of nothing but steak on its own, by itself. Um, I distinctly remember that sensation in my stomach. It's so different from eating it together with other foods, or eating other foods altogether, actually. Um, it felt as if the meat liquefied on contact with stomach acid. My stomach was so flat. I've never felt anything like that after eating. Coming from a long history of vegetarianism and veganism, we always eat in volume or bulk. There's always that slight stretch, sometimes, major stretch in the stomach right after eating. But this time with the steak, for the first time ever, my stomach was so flat right after eating. And I felt so satisfied, so satiated. And that satiety and satisfaction lasted for 24 hours. I wasn't hungry for the rest of the day. I mean, I wasn't used to that because I was just like, eating so often, like constant several times a day. So that was all my fears about digestion, about possible constipation went out the window. And a few days, and maybe over a period of weeks, but I felt so good, already from that first experience. First of all, the digestion was just so remarkably mind blowing. I mean, it was an experience. It's very hard to describe unless you actually experience it. I went on with that for several days, and it turned to weeks, and then I noticed total elimination of all my remaining health issues. I've never had any ache or pain, no achy joints, no arthritis, nothing. Tinnitus gone, boils gone. I've never experienced any since that time when I went full carnivore. No more toenail fungus, no eye infection, it's nothing. For the first time ever in my life, I'm experiencing a level of health that's free of disease and pain without any medication, without any supplements, without any vitamins, multivitamins, pills, no medical intervention, just by tweaking my diet, changing it to a fully carnivore one. And that happened 5 years ago. And I've been on that diet until now. For the first 3 years of my carnivore journey, I was doing it alone. But on the third year, my husband, Dr. Conlu, after seeing my massive health transformation, joined me on the carnivore diet. And now he's also a carnivore and been on it for 2 years. In his case, his background was he was coming from several years on a low carb, intermittent fasting lifestyle. He was in it for 5 years or so, but all this while he was overweight and suffering from irritable bowel syndrome. And it was only when he removed the last bit of plant food in his diet and when he went fully carnivore that he finally lost weight and he completely healed from irritable bowel syndrome. And up until now, he has maintained his ideal weight and he has also reversed completely his irritable bowel syndrome with no recurrence of symptoms. So both of us are now symptom free and disease free on this diet.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, maraming salamat. If I can do a little recap, tama ba? The first phase talaga was the 20 years vegetarian. And then the
Yeah.
second phase, yung the wake-up call was really the need for bone marrow transplant. So, parang
I was
almost like
traumatized by that.
leukemia ka na yun. Oo, sobrang nakakatakot. And for those of you who just met Attorney Asra, yung husband po niya is Dr. Munich Conlu. So, he is a practicing physician of nuclear medicine daw, no? Nuclear medicine. And actually, a friend of mine, Dr. Nico de la Cruz, yung mentor daw niya si Doc Munich sa St. Luke's before. So, I would like to say hi. He's also practicing keto, low carb. So, with this, after 20 years vegetarian, you even went, kasi baka iniisip, no, yung vegetarian, hindi pa ganun ka parang healthy. You even went beyond, no, and really
Yeah.
shifted into vegan, wherein nakita mo, mas lumala pa yung previous mong health issues. And just and that happened, you started really questioning things at doon na nag-incorporate ka na slowly. And you started with somewhat safe animal, no? Safe animal products like eggs, yung white meat nga, sobrang last talaga yung red meat kasi yun talaga yung parang kinakatakutan ng most people. But with you, you slowly transitioned and eventually nga, you said no na you finally made the decision of just eating steak for the first time alone with more than parang maybe that time no half of your life kasi nga before vegetarian you're already not fond of eating meat, so it's like all of your life first time to be eating ulam alone, nothing else but just steak, and that was your fourth phase carnivore. And I believe after this you also had a short phase, no, a raw carnivore, which is lasted about a year, tama ba? Yeah,
Yes,
so
you
I
want me
think
to talk?
yes,
I can talk about it if you wish.
yes, please.
Okay. So the first year on the carnivore journey, I was eating steak every day, mostly steak. Well, of course, there's pork chop here and there, but it was mostly steak. And that's for the first 1 year.
Okay.
I would eat up to 2 pounds a day, which is quite shocking for somebody with a small frame. I'm very petite. I'm only 5'1". But at that point, that is exactly what I was hungry for. So I would eat 1 to 2 pounds a day of just steak or pork chop. And then on the, I think, 12-month mark or 1 year mark, I started craving more fat. Because prior to that, I wasn't really thinking about the fat to protein ratio. I was just give me steak, just give me meat, I would eat it. But then, on the 12-month mark, I craved more fat, and I was also starting to crave liver, which wasn't really kind of strange because I kind of grew up on organ meat. So I incorporated some organ meat, and more fat to my carnivore diet, and I noticed major reduction in my daily food intake. It was cut down to almost half of what I used to eat in the beginning, in the first year. By the way, on the first year, I also gained some fat. I unexpected, but it wasn't really. I gained. It was mostly belly fat, so it wasn't muscle at all. It was really fat. And then when I started incorporating more fat and organs to my carnivore diet, my food intake dramatically went down, and the belly fat also kind of melted away. And then, a few months of doing that, I started experiencing what you may probably call oxalate dumping or histamine reactions. The two are kind of interrelated because oxalate can liberate histamines in the body, so it's really hard to pinpoint which is which. It's like a moving target. It's hard to know for sure what's happening. But at that point, when I was experiencing these symptoms, I would describe them as calculus build up on the lower part of my front teeth, which is the first time that it ever happened to me. So I was wondering, I'm on a very healthy diet. Why is this happening? But that's not necessarily a bad thing, actually. When I later learned about it, and I experienced some, rashes, some skin rashes, and some itching. My eye would itch, and my eyelid would sometimes swell. I would have some runny nose here and there, and then some dry cough. These are all just very mild symptoms that would happen, after eating or on and off. This is like the experimental stage, the early years, the early stage of my carnivore journey. So those were what I distinctly remember before I started to crave steak tartare. So by that point, I was already searing my steak less and less, enjoying it blue rare. So I just thought, why even bother with cooking? On our, our family travels a lot, and in our visits to Europe, we were exposed to that raw meat culture. In Italy, you have the beef carpaccio. In France, you have the steak tartare. It's in Peru, you have the ceviche, and in Japan, you have the sashimi. So that's not a very strange thing as far as I was concerned. And that's also when I started to launch my first YouTube channel. When I was on that raw primal stage of my health journey, I was eating purely steak tartare and also fresh eggs. I would eat the yolk in its fresh state. And also for the first time ever, I started craving dairy, but raw dairy. I would source the highest quality raw dairy you can find here in the Philippines. I would get raw buffalo milk or raw goat's milk, and I would make my own raw cheese. It's actually very easy to do. I would just ferment at home the raw goat milk or raw buffalo milk, and I would even make clabbered milk or natural kefir without any grains. And I would also make sour cream out of this raw milk. So that constituted my carnivore diet for 1 year. There are different variations of the carnivore diet. There are strict ones that don't include dairy at all, and there are some that include dairy because it's still animal derived. It's and some also even include some honey and fruits. At this point, the raw primal phase of my health journey, I incorporated a little bit of honey, but not so much. Just maybe at the most 1 teaspoon a day, and only once in a while, just to try it out. But I didn't particularly enjoy it because by that time I was already fat adapted, and my taste buds were already craving, fat, not sweets. I was already quite put off by anything that's sweet, and my palate became very sensitive to sweet taste, to the point where even plain water tasted very sweet to me. It's so strange because if you haven't eaten sugar for such a long time, it becomes somehow the palate becomes hypersensitive to sweetness. So the honey, even raw honey, became nauseatingly sweet. So I didn't care for it. So that for 1 year, my daily food intake consisted of steak tartare, fresh eggs, raw dairy, and just one honey once in a blue moon. And then since we travel a lot, at one point, on the I think 1 year and 3 months on that raw primal stage, I went to Bali, and we all know that Bali is a Hindu community, and beef is not part of their diet at all. So it's really pork, and I would never eat pork raw or chicken, or I would never eat any non-ruminant meat raw. So only high quality ruminant meat like lamb or beef that I would eat steak tartare style. So when I was in Bali, I stayed in a place where I could cook, and I would buy pork from the market, and I would cook the pork, and I ate everything thoroughly cooked. And I also wasn't very sure about the quality of the eggs, so I also cooked the eggs that I sourced while I was in Bali. And I noticed that I no longer had any oxalate tapping symptoms or histamine reactions to cooked meat, which was what prompted me to go raw primal on the the 12-year mark on my carnivore journey. So from then on, I had been okay with eating cooked meat. So it differs person to person. It's an individual sensitivity thing. Some people can suddenly develop a certain sensitivity to cooked meat for some reason, and how I dealt with that was not to give up on the carnivore diet or not to give up on meat altogether, but to eat it raw. But very, very high quality, well sourced, ruminant, 100% grass fed beef. I'm very fastidious when it comes to sourcing the food. So I've never experienced, by the way, any foodborne illness in the entire time that I was on this carnivore diet, including the time when I was on the raw primal diet. I've never experienced a single foodborne illness episode. The only time that I suffered foodborne illness was when I was vegetarian, when I was eating, all these mock meat, like soy-based meat, a meat made out of tofu. I had several bouts of extreme, the food poisoning in those cases. Also eating at vegetarian restaurants, eating salad with a dressing made out of what, God knows what. And um, it has never been that's one thing that I like about the carnivore diet, because it's so simple. There are not many ingredients. You only have one ingredient, in fact. If, like me, you don't season your meat heavily, I only have one ingredient. Um, so it's easier to control the quality. And the possibility of food contamination is greatly reduced than when eating a mixed diet, with several ingredients, with so much going on in one plate. It's like a medley of, a different, because they always tell us to eat the rainbow, several different colors on the plate. So, but eating only meat and nothing else, it was a very safe route. So, okay, that was my enlightening moment in Bali. I stayed there for 1 month, and so I was able to experience it, going fully 1 month on a fully cooked carnivore diet and not having any symptoms. So I was very happy with that, because now I can just prepare the same thing for the family, cook the same batch of meat and then share it with everyone else. And I like that flexibility, and it's also more approachable and more acceptable socially, to share a meal, especially here in the country. Whenever you go to a banquet, it's um, there's always meat there on the table, so it's easy to practice a carnivore diet with on the cooked version of it. And it's actually just a short phase of my carnivore journey because I've been on it for 5 years, and that's just 1 year and a few months that it was raw primal. So now the stage where I am at is I am eating a fully cooked carnivore diet, but very high in animal fat, and I incorporate organs, particularly liver, at least 500 grams a week of liver. So I eat a small portion every day. I eat it together with my steak. And actually, I don't eat steak anymore these days. What I eat is beef belly because that is where all the fat is concentrated. And now, so much after the fat, it doesn't look so appetizing anymore to me looking at the ribeye or the expensive steaks, sirloin, tenderloin. It's so lean. It looks to me like it just doesn't look appetizing anymore. So it's just a small portion of meat and animal fat that I need now to eat because I think of the nutrient density with the inclusion of liver and the plenty of animal fats that I eat, which is a minimum of 100 grams of animal fat, pure animal fat a day. So that is where I am at the moment. Yeah, and I intend to keep on this diet because I'm still enjoying the exact same vibrant health.
Thank you so much, attorney, no? And if only later you can read all the messages, pagkakita pa lang nila sa'yo, convinced na sila na mag-carnivore. Because of how youthful you look, of how young you look. Para hindi talaga makapaniwala na you're already 49. You only look like 30s for me. Oh, parang ang mas matanda pa ako sa'yo. So you could just be 20s. So you look really, really young. And that alone speaks so much kasi our health really glows from the outside. So to recap your story nga, you are not really a fat former. So importante for those who are really bashing about low carb and keto and carnivore na for weight loss lang daw. So, Attorney Astra is here. Never siyang nagka-issue sa kanyang weight, okay? Time immemorial, wala siyang issue sa kanyang weight. Her issues is really about her health. So, thank you for sharing that because sobrang dami talaga na nagsasabi na this one is sustainable and vegetarian and vegan is more sustainable daw. If you can look at it in years, of course, ikaw siguro yung pinakamatagal na vegetarian that I know, na 20 years strict vegetarian, and by the looks of it, you are not the type who easily gives up. Hindi ka madaling nag-give up. Kaya nga sa sobrang tagal na you were already experiencing a lot of health issues, you were all putting the blame on yourself. Baka hindi ka pa vegetarian enough, hindi ka pa mas physically active enough, and you are already an expert level yogi na siguro by that time. And yet, something is not right. Meditation helps, okay? I believe in meditation, the power of meditation, but your food intake really can make or break you, ika nga. And when I would like to emphasize, nung right after, kasi generally our community is mostly what your first experience is, which was low carb omnivore, which is most of the plate is half vegetables and half meat. Okay? So, somewhat yung vegetables yan is fiber eh. And I can agree with you na para siyang security blanket. Ang hirap let go nung mga panahon na yon kasi parang security blanket talaga siya na baka kung wala ito, ewan ko, the other place of just eating full meat is so bizarre, is so strange, is so parang unknown for the most of us na parang ang hirap-hirap let go. But finally, I believe you already have the wisdom, no? To really tell yourself na sa sobrang dami na iniisip natin noon na healthy habit, which is going vegetarian and then eventually going vegan, are not for everybody. So as of this point, we would like to say that we are not convincing everybody to go to carnivore because who knows, baka kayo, magka-eczema din with carnivore. So, iba-iba po yung kada tao. So, we are just here expressing our own experiences. So, before you entered kanina, I actually shared my experience last year na nag-try kami mismo ng mother ko, si Maming, which was 65 years old na siya. Nag-try kaming mag-vegetarian, low-carb vegetarian. And mind you, it's OMAD vegetarian. So, one OMAD lang kami. So, I know the gutom na grabe talaga nakakagutom because most of the vegetables are mostly carbs. So, you are mostly fueling on carbohydrates talaga. And the time that you are already in ketosis, that wasn't parang nutritional ketosis. That was really starvation ketosis. And that is something that we do not agree on. And yung sabi mo nga, yung first phase na puro lean meats, yung kinakain, walang masyadong fats, because if there is a fear of red meat, there is a larger fear of fats in animal fats, di ba? And you really go through the transition nga na natakot ka din with fats. But to support that with scientific data, no, merong nag-experiment doon because this doctor who went sa North Pole ata yon or saan yon, and na-stuck siya doon, and he noted na people there, the Inuits, are actually purely carnivore. Salmon and meat, all the meat lang na kinakain nila. Walang kahit anong plant-produced. And they saw that their health is on top. So they tried to mimic that kind of carnivore eating sa Amerika. Pero nakita nila na yung result nila hindi maganda. Only then they found out that what's wrong with their experiment is they did full carnivore but devoid of fats. Because there should be ample amount of proportion when it comes to proteins and fats. Pure protein alone is not sustainable. As much as there is essential proteins, there is also essential fats. At kailangan natin yon for overall functioning. And I can just recall, no, yung sinabi mo na during the time that you were eating all lean meats, ay doon ka nagkaroon ng belly fat. And para sa iba, parang hindi siya ma-explain kung paano ka nagkaroon ng belly fat. This is because very timely yung shinare ni Sir Zario sa isang group namin na article, no, wherein saturated fats leads to insulin resistance. Okay? So, this is another aspect na we can look into. Kasi alam natin, too much sugar can lead to insulin resistance. And yung mga anti-low carb, yung sinasabi, it's the fats that makes insulin resistance. Pero sa totoo lang, yun yung sinasabi natin, we are looking at different side of an elephant. Because both are true. Both are true. Saturated fat intake, yes, can lead into lipotoxicity. It can lead into some degree of insulin resistance. Pero the problem with having insulin resistance from carbs and sugar ay nagkakaroon din ito ng lipotoxicity because of fat buildup. But the insulin resistance, when you eat saturated fats and without carbs, actually it is protective. It is protective in a way that your cells is no longer dependent on glucose as energy. Because as you said, there is fat adaptation. And one action of fats, of insulin rather, on fat cells is fat buildup. That's why nung panahon na wala kang kinakain na saturated fats, your belly are not insulin resistant. That's why they were prone to fat deposits. And that is the reason why the moment you started incorporating eating good quality saturated fats, the belly fats went off because it just went on fat burning. Wala na itong parang degree of build up galing actually sa too much proteins. So, for those of you who have been following our page, we are prioritizing our proteins. Yun yung sinasabi natin, di ba? But we are not forgetting our fats. Yung fats natin, yung sabi ni Attorney Conlu, 100 grams of fats. So actually, medyo marami siya tingnan. Pero if you think about it, 100 grams of fat would be just around, mga nasa 6 to mga 9 eggs. Mga around 9 eggs in equivalent when it comes to fat of egg yolks. Or, yun, the usual, ni attorney would be 2 pounds or less than mga around half a kilo of meat maybe. Okay, so those are possible examples. Ang importante na we recognize that carnivore diet may not be for everyone, but we have Attorney Astra, who is a living testimony that it might work, if not for everybody, but maybe for those who are still searching, who are already into low carb, who have been into many kinds of elimination diet, but still cannot fully say that I am at the top of my health. And meron tayo dito, our admin in our Life Without Rice and Low Carb Feasting and Fasting community, Clono, who is in Japan right now, based in Japan. No wonder daw, sobrang dami ng eczema na cases in Japan right now. And you know, heartbreaking yun para sa kanya because she also loves green tea, no, for because of, and but because of this maybe she will start to think twice. So attorney, thank you so much, pero yung time natin medyo kakaunti pa, but if you still have time, okay lang ba, we can accommodate some questions?
Yes, of course, of course.
Thank you so much. So, speaking of ating green tea, so sa ngayon ba, do you take anything since you are somewhat in full carnivore? Do you take anything? Like say for example, cocoa or coffee or other teas?
No, I don't anymore. Over the course of 5 years, I have done extensive research on nutrition because I really, it was an eye-opening experience for me to witness the direct causation between food and health, food and disease. So I've done some research of my own, and I've been very much aware of the presence of anti-nutrients, in plant foods. This might not be a very popular topic for your community, but then I would just have to share what I believe about it. For example, the cacao, is very high in oxalates, which probably must have contributed to my massive oxalate dumping symptoms, and other teas as well. So my thought process is this. What would be the point of drinking it? Certainly, it's not for nutrition because there is no nutrition that is found in cacao, in coffee, in tea that is not available in meat, animal fat, and organs. That is my belief. So if I'm not drinking it for nutrition, what would be the reason for drinking it? Is it for pleasure? I don't derive any pleasure out of it. To be honest, I was just drinking the green tea because it was touted to be health promoting and full of antioxidants. So, of course, it was full of these antioxidants that was just, it's really for the benefit of the plant to protect itself from being eaten. That's why it was attacking my digestive system and my entire immune system, my entire body. So I don't see a point in drinking any of this. So to just cut it short, the only thing I drink is water. So I don't drink any other.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is really enlightening, no? And kung ako, no, sa totoo lang, I really believe that when it comes to nutrition alone, carnivore is sustainable. As long as you, always kung sinasabi yan, carnivore is sustainable. O if you are eating yung nose to tail approach, yung kinakain mo pati in internal organs, because the most nutritious part is actually the liver. And as you can see with Attorney Astra, yun yung kinakain din niya. And somewhat, kahit hindi mo sinabi yung proportions, for those na mga patients ko, alam nila yon, that I actually advise them, instead of taking multivitamins, I actually advise them, get a piece of liver a day. And wag mo siyang i-consider as part of your meat or ulam. Para siyang side mo lang na isama mo in addition to your protein needs and your animal meat proteins. And anti-nutrients was actually one of the topics in our recently concluded Low Carb Con. So yung Low Carb Con 2021 convention here in the Philippines just last month, na discuss yun doon, na wherein plants, no, have antioxidants. They most with the highest antioxidants also have the highest anti-nutrients. And that is where you can other people can have some drawbacks talaga, because if you are very sensitive to it, so individual differences still apply. For those who are happy and are 100% na masasabi nila na they are at the top of their health with what they're eating. So wala kami pong balak na baguhin kayo or whatever, or to push you whatever we have here, we are discussing here, but we are just plainly offering, no? Hindi naman lahat nagbabasa ng libro, hindi lahat nag-explore. So this is one venue wherein you can possibly see the other side. And yes, when it comes to different nutrients, like certain beans will have all of these B vitamins and certain meat will have all of these B vitamins din. So pareho sila. Parati pang ngang nagko-compare na mas mataas daw yung value ng certain vitamins on beans and legumes and all that. Pero the question there is absorbability. How much of it are being absorbed in your body? Because animal-based proteins and meat is actually very, very highly bioavailable. Yung common sense lang, kahit hindi tayo scientist level, no? Yung common sense lang, yung ating anatomy po, mas malapit sa animals kesa sa puno o sa beans, no? So of course, what is in animals is somewhat mas madaling ma-absorb ng katawan natin because we have somewhat general similar anatomy as compared to sa mga plants. So thank you so much, attorney, for answering that. And another question, how about po the sabi nilang byproducts of animals like fermented products, kimchi, kombucha, water kefir, and all that? What can you say about those?
We don't really need that at all. Fermented, you're talking about fermented foods like sauerkraut. I don't see any need, although I would say that I consume massive amount of them, of course, during my vegetarian days, and I saw no benefit out of it. This is my anecdotal experience. And I also don't see any benefit out of it because our microbiome is a product of what we eat. And if you're only eating meat, animal fat, and organs, then it would balance by itself naturally because it's getting its natural fuel, its natural food. We don't need to introduce bacteria, we don't need to introduce fermented vegetables into it. Although, if there are people who would like to incorporate vegetables in their diet and could not still let go of vegetables, the most digestible, probably the least, I would say, the least harmful vegetable would be the fermented ones because of the, it's been broken down by bacteria. But still, there is no benefit out of it. So at best, they're just less harmful.
Thank you.
I don't know if I was able to express my thoughts about it clearly. There is no benefit out of it. And they're just less harmful than the fresh version of the vegetable.
Okay. So thank you so much, attorney, for that, no? And for those naman who are fond of eating it, so those, for example, kimchi and sauerkraut, the bacteria that will be in there, the probiotics that will be in there, are the ones digesting fiber. Okay? So if you are on carnivore, you are not eating a lot of fiber. So actually, it won't help. Yun yung sinasabi ni attorney. It doesn't help. Because when you are already consuming carnivore, the bacteria, the microbiome, yung bacteria po na tumutulong with our digestion in our tummy, will also evolve. There's trillions of them. So they will also evolve according to your type of food intake. So kaya yung mga merong sobrang nababaliw na mga stomach issues are those people who are eating whatever, eating everything. So, wala nang hindi na alam ng yung tiyan kung ano ba talaga yung kanyang dapat na i-predominate to help you. So, when you are eating, if ever you will incorporate like kimchi or sauerkraut or other vegetables, yun yung sinasabi. The stand of mostly eating carnivore is actually, it's just a preference. And hindi pwedeng gawing excuse yung nutritional need. Because by nature, the nutrition can be found and are more, tawag natin ito, highly bioavailable. Meaning, na-absorb ng tiyan natin lahat. Okay? And as emphasis, no, si Sir Zarius, yung first guest natin before na carnivore din, plant has defense mechanism na hindi alam ng karamihan. And that defense mechanism are hiding under plant toxins na kasi nga hindi sila makatakbo, so their defense mechanism is inculcated in them. It's in their genes. It's when we eat them. Nandyan yan. Okay? So, yun yung pinaka-importante for us to recognize that when it comes to nutrition, no, walang problema po with carnivore. You can get everything as long as hindi kayo choosy. Kaya ako hindi makapag-full carnivore. Kaya pinipilit ko pang lunukin talaga yung liver. So ngayon, I just put the liver in the blender and I mixed it sa beef patty ngayon para ma-incorporate ko siya. So slowly, natututunan ko naman, pero I'm still quite a long way to go. So yes, but I always believe that carnivore can be sustainable when it comes to nutrition-wise na speaking. And another question po, attorney, pero grabe yung concern ng lahat dito. Constipation. Hindi ba daw hindi na yan makakapag-poop kasi wala nang kahit anong green sa iyong plato?
Yeah, that was my biggest concern as well before. Let's define our terms first. Stool is what's left of the food that we eat after we have assimilated and fully digested it. Okay, so meaning when you're eating something that is fully absorbed and fully digested, it's just normal that the amount and the frequency of bowel movement will be significantly less. If we're eating a mixed diet that's consisting of a medley of different foods, processed food, sugar, vegetable oils, plant foods, the standard Filipino diet, it's healthy to have a daily bowel movement because there are toxins that are in those foods that are not supposed to stay in our digestive tract, in our system. And because there is a lot of undigested and unassimilated material. But when you're eating only meat and animal fat or organs, almost entirely, it's assimilated and fully digested. So I understand the concern because a daily bowel movement is always associated with health, with good health. That's why there's a strong push to eat fiber. But that's what fiber does. We cannot digest it, we cannot assimilate it. That's why we have to expel it. So what's the logic of that? So if what you're intaking is fully absorbed by your body and perfectly digested, don't expect a daily bowel movement. I don't know if it's too much information or if people are eating right now. Excuse me, but I would just as this is part of this anecdotal experience testimony. So on average, I would only go once a week, and there is no pain or discomfort. So that's the sign of constipation. It's not the frequency. It's not that you're going for several days without doing number two or without the bowel movement. It's whether are you experiencing pain? Are you experiencing discomfort? In my case, it's very easy to pass. And believe it or not, it's odorless. And I am saying this, coming from a vegetarian and vegan background, a mixed diet, my bowel movements, my stool stank to high heavens. It's expected because it's like a combination of several food items, the entire, the whole food pyramid in my digestive tract. So it was really smelly. So I had that thinking that it's normal for stool to stink. But not until I went carnivore. And it's another thing that really blew my mind. And that's another thing that also convinced me that this is probably the proper human diet. We're also used to having stinky stool. So one of the things that I noticed when I turned carnivore was that the stool was odorless. So that alone is paradigm shifting. It's like living in an alternate or a parallel universe where stool doesn't smell. And I would get ghost wipes. Um, like when you wipe. I'm sorry for the TMI, for the too much information. It's clean. It's not messy. There's nothing to wipe because it's um
Form.
please stop me if it's already too much information. It's very clean and so easy to pass and odorless, and it's the amount is less in terms of volume. The frequency is much less. 7 days, and sometimes it can go. There was a point where I went as long as 14 days, but even then, on the 14th day, it was very easy to pass. There was no pain. There was no discomfort. It was just like just like passing urine. It's just so smooth, effortless, and odorless. So it's a pleasant experience. Like it's as if your whole body is operating at its most optimum efficiency. It's like a car that's supposed to have gas. You keep fueling it with diesel, so that's why it's not functioning properly. But then finally you give it gas, and finally it's operating at the perfect efficiency. That's how my body feels right now. So even the bowel movement is a very pleasant experience. There is no offensive odor, nothing like that. And there is also not no gas. I would anyone who has been a vegetarian or a vegan would attest to that. The gassiness. Oh my gosh! I mean, you pass gas several times a day because there's so much fermentation going on in your gut, and it's so stinky. It's so stinky, so gassy. You're gassy all the time and stinky. But on a carnivore diet, there's hardly any gas. It's connected to the constipation issue because it's part of the digestion. There's hardly any gas, and if at all, it has no smell. So that's my experience. The frequency is less, the volume is less. There's no pain, there's no discomfort. It's odorless. So I've never experienced constipation on the carnivore diet for the past 5 years. The only time I ever suffered from constipation was when I was eating tons of fiber. Go figure, right? I mean, they always tell us to eat fiber to prevent constipation. But when I was in a vegan, vegetarian diet, oh my gosh, I was constantly alternating between diarrhea and constipation. My digestion was out of whack. It was just so crazy. And the more fiber I ate, the worse it got. So I'm not a believer in fiber at all. I've been on a zero fiber diet for the past 5 years, and my digestion is perfect. Not a single experience or episode of constipation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, attorney, si Onyx Girl. Speaking of dogs, no, meron din daw isang experience dito si Mariel na when I feed their dogs with raw meat, and nawala rin. Their stools are small and not stinky. And yes, we are actually closer to dogs than we are closer to vegetarian animals because dogs are carnivore, and our gastrointestinal system sa haba po ng ating small intestines and sa short lang ng ating large intestines and stomach, that shows na we are not really meant to eat a lot of vegetables when it comes to proportions, okay? And about constipation, I would like to add sa sinabi ni Attorney Astra na constipation, we have to quantify that and qualify that by definition. Very hard to pass, may bleeding, may difficulty, mayroong abdominal discomfort, abdominal pain, and of course, no, yung iba nahihilo na. So those are constipation. But lessening of stool bulk is not automatic constipation. Okay? Yung ibig sabihin po na ni attorney is actually the low residue foods. Anong ibig sabihin ng low residue foods? So low residue, we still go back to what we just said about high bioavailability. Meaning halos lahat po ng kinakain mo when you are on carnivore are almost absorbed. Everything is absorbed. So halos wala na yung natitira dyan. Maybe kakaunting mga bone fragments or cartilaginous fragments or whatever na mga linings like the veins and the blood vessels who are very thick. yun lang siguro yung matitira. But generally, with low residue foods, it is expected to having less stool frequency then. So it is just expected. You can watch Dr. Berg's Ken Berry pala. Dr. Ken Berry when he put there yung stool chart, yung iba't iba. And don't worry sa mga viewers natin, either naka-fasting yan or nakatapos ng kumain because it's already 7:30 and usually we promote circadian rhythm, circadian feeding, circadian eating wherein come sundown, tapos na tayong kumain. We go back always to our roots and it's not just natural for us to eat late every day and every night. So thank you po Attorney Astra for that and to emphasize also no yun yung sinabi mo when it comes to ating fart no when we pass on our gas hindi rin siya ganon ka-smelly. And that is really true and hindi ko lang sasabihin pero yung brother ko si Andrew maraming stories about that and he is very very proud right now na hindi na po ganon siya ka-embarrass kapag po parating nagagas kasi noon only rice din yun eh and with too much of these foods you really need to eliminate so much then so it's just really expected when it comes to constipation. And I think yung isang importanteng factor na people are, when they transition, what they are having a hard time because they are used of the habit. Yung habit nila na everyday it's like their routine na kapag hindi nila nagagawa is they don't feel so good. So the mindset is also a very important aspect at yung iba na sinasabing nahihirapan sila because they are forcing themselves to pass it out. Wherein, kung totoo pong ready na kayong magpalabas ng inyong mga residue sa inyong katawan, it will just give you the urge. You don't need to force to eliminate kung walang kailangang eliminate. Just because routine ninyo na kapag pagkatapos nyong gumising and then nasa CR na kayo, first 30 minutes, you have your toilet routine at hindi na yon nangyayari. So, those are the important mindset that you should consider. So, Attorney, meron mga few more questions. Yung isa about food intake and about fasting. Do you also fast in a day? And then, do you eat how many times in a day?
You know, what I love the most about the carnivore diet is the simplicity. I don't need to count the hours of fasting or anything like that. I just go by my hunger. I just eat whenever I'm hungry. So there's not an hour or there's not a minute of hunger. And this just happens, as I've said in the beginning. Naturally, you go into OMAD. You tend to eat one meal a day because whatever you eat satisfies you for the whole day. And I'm just naturally not hungry until the following day. And, sometimes when I get really busy, I even forget to eat. There was a time, this is my record, I reached 96 hours without even thinking about it. Just because I don't get hungry at all. At that point, I don't know, I was probably on my third or fourth year on the carnivore diet. I was already very much fat adapted. And I got so busy, and the hours just flew by, the days just flew by, and they forgot to eat. But my energy level was so steady. It was from the moment I wake up until the time that I eat, even sleeping and then, sleep again and then wake up. It's just so steady. There is no rise, in hunger. There is no signal for hunger. It was just effortless fasting. It's not intentional fasting. So what I do now, okay, so you're asking what my current eating schedule is that now, I eat once a day. Actually, I brought here, I show you an example. This is, can you see it? This is pork belly. This is beef belly. So you can see the streaks of fat. That's how much meat and fat that I eat. This is about almost 400 grams. So almost 1 pound. And this is enough for me for a whole day. It can keep me full. And I can even go on until the next day. I think I can go on. Because sometimes I just eat because I feel like I just really want to eat. And also because I'm already at at my ideal weight, and I don't wanna lose any more body fat or any more body weight. I just am on a maintenance level right now. So if I don't eat at least once a day, I might be losing too much weight, which I don't want to happen. So I eat about 400 grams a day of um, meat and animal fat. So the ratio is about 300 grams of lean meat and 100 grams of pure animal fat. And then liver to that, maybe 50 grams or 60 grams of liver. I eat it together with the lean meat and the animal fat. This beef belly that I showed you. That's around 11 a.m. Usually, that's what I had today. My last meal was at 11 a.m. And I'll probably eat again tomorrow at around that time, 11 a.m. Noon time. Usually, my cutoff is noon time. I don't anymore eat anything by that time. I like to go to bed um, without any food in my stomach. I want everything to be fully digested. I sleep better that way. So I tend to eat early in the day, at least once a day. But from time to time, it goes on for at least like every other day or every 2 days. I eat one meal for every 2 days or 3 days, which just naturally happens without any intention. It's not like I wake up that day and say, okay, now I'm gonna fast for 48 hours or I'm gonna fast for 72 hours. I don't have any schedule like that. I just go with the flow of do I feel like eating right now? Maybe yes, maybe I could eat. Does meat sound appetizing right now? Then I just go with that, and then I stop when I'm full. And usually, that's after eating this entire meal of about 400 grams, a day. I'm totally satisfied at the end of that meal. And also, since you're asking about fasting, I tend to do a dry fast naturally because I naturally don't get thirsty because of the high fat content of the diet. We're producing a lot of metabolic water out of it, and I've learned that over the the past years of my also research on nutrition that we're producing actually a lot of metabolic water when we are in nutritional ketosis, when we're eating plenty of animal fat, so we don't really get thirsty. And I have personally experienced that. I hardly ever get thirsty. And the only time I feel a need to drink is right, after eating, usually about an hour or 2 hours after my meal. That's when I would drink water. And this is much less than what I used to drink. So in effect, I'm doing intermittent fasting with the dry fasting combined naturally, without forcing it. Um, Back when I was on a very carbohydrate heavy diet, on a carbohydrate metabolism, I used to drink at least 8 glasses of water a day, and I was constantly thirsty. But now that I'm constantly in ketosis, probably 24/7 ketosis, I can only drink up to 2 glasses of water a day. This bottle of water that I have here is just to wet my lips because my lips tend to get dry when I'm talking. But I am not really drinking it because right now I'm not even thirsty. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Attorney Nels. I can relate with so many things that you said. And right now nga, for those who have been following us, we are actually around going 30 hours na naka-fasting kami ngayon. And that 24 hours of that is dry fasting. So for those who are asking, no, I made a video about dry fasting, how our fats, no, and the fats that we eat can be converted not just on for ketones as energy, but also as metabolic water. It is the purest, cleanest form of water kasi po gawa yan ng katawan ninyo. So that is another topic for another time. And of course, no, for those who are asking about cholesterol and saturated fats, marami na pong video na ginawa natin dyan. Just search on it. This is not the time for that. If you are still on the fear of fat phase, so you are a long way to go going to carnivore. But if you have these questions in mind, you follow that line of thought, no? Who knows? Baka maron kayong makitang sagot, and that could be what happened to Attorney Asra, na nakita din niya yung mga hinahanap niya just by asking certain questions. And meron pa dito ang isa pa, attorney, dalawa siguro, no? Pwede ba to? And yes, how about daw uric acid? And also, I would like to add na lang din, how about the need for electrolytes? Do you have the need for electrolytes? And I can see you're drinking actually a natural mineral water. That's the ones that we are taking then whenever we're after a fast or that, no? So, ano po yung masasabi nyo when it comes to need for electrolytes and also fear of uric acid?
You know, the beauty of the carnivore diet is, as I've said, it's simplicity. You don't need to supplement anything. If you're just eating meat, animal fat, and organs, it already comes in the right, the complete electrolytes in the right balance, in the perfect ratio. So just supplementing it will just offset the natural balance. That's what I have also learned over the years. It's and also our the mineral requirements, the RDA requirements for minerals doesn't really apply to this zero carbohydrate diet because you're fueling on fat, you're in ketosis. So the requirements for there's the for example the glucose and carbohydrates. I mean the yeah carbohydrates and magnesium. The relationship between also antioxidants like vitamin C. It's a totally different. It's a different game altogether when you remove all carbohydrates. The metabolism is different. The fat metabolism, it's so different. The requirements don't apply. So we don't have to think about this. We don't have to think about supplementing anything at all, even magnesium and everything. Although I've experienced a symptom of magnesium deficiency, which is like cramping, when I was in Korea at the time, and it was very hard to get animal fat, so most of the meats were very lean. Sometimes it can happen that when we're eating lean meat and not enough animal fat, it can upset electrolyte balance because you actually go back to uh, carbohydrate metabolism, even if you're not eating carbohydrates anymore, even if it's a zero carbohydrate diet, because of gluconeogenesis. If you're eating too much protein, then it can convert into glucose, and that can upset the electrolyte balance. So as long as the fat to protein ratio is on point, there's no need to worry about electrolytes. There's no need to supplement anything at all. And yeah, you're right. If ever I drink water, which is very minimal, like I've said, the exogenous water that I take is just up to the maximum of 2 glasses a day because the best water is really metabolic water, the purest water. So and it also drinking too much water can flush out electrolytes. So that's also something that's connected with carbohydrate metabolism, which again doesn't apply to this um, fat metabolism diet. Just meat and animal fat and organs. Um, there's no need to think about that because it's all in perfect ratio and in the right balance. So in the beginning, the uric acid you mentioned, in the beginning, usually at the start, there's a rise in the uric acid in some people who are starting on the carnivore diet because uric acid and ketones compete for, they're both excreted in the kidney and they compete for exiting in the body. That's why, there's like traffic there. There is a bottleneck for the ketones to be excreted and for the uric acid to be excreted. But it's only in the beginning, and it's not a cause for concern. Eventually, it just balances out. that's just in the eventually it's not an issue at all on the carnivore diet, from what I know.
Yes, attorney. Thank you very much, no. So I would like to remind everybody, no, Astra Conlu is a lawyer and an economist by heart. But as she speaks, no, baka makalimutan natin na hindi po siya yung doktor. Ang doktor po ay yung husband niya na nandito rin. Hello po, Doc Munich. He is here right now and cheering for you po, attorney. So I hope we can have him next time around. So and to add to your emphasis on uric acid, yes, mostly sa nagsisimula, it's just transient because of the lack of insulin, the lowered insulin na hindi na nare-recycle yung uric acid. Okay? So during the transition phase, you might need some help, no, para ma-eliminate yon if it's already causing problems like gouty attacks or nagkakaroon talaga ng joint pains and all that. But for those without symptoms, don't worry, it will normalize in no time. But if you are in doubt, no, we have low carb doctors who can assist you. Kasi yung iba, kinakailangan muna to increase their potassium intake together with that during the initial phase to neutralize it. And yes, ibang story po kapag may combined na carbohydrates when it comes to low carb nutrition and full carnivore. Kasi carbohydrates will really, yung sinasabi ni attorney kanina, carbohydrate will need so much. At kapag tumataas kasi yung glucose sa katawan natin, your body will try to eliminate it by flushing it out. But what is getting flushed out is hindi lang po water. You are also flushing out your sodium, you're also flushing out your potassium, you're also flushing out your magnesium, and that is where imbalance can come in if you do not supplement the right way or you eat at the right amount para makompleto yung requirements ninyo. But as per experience ni Attorney Asra, full carnivore, clean carnivore, would not need so much of those supplements, even other electrolytes. And again, agree with the too much proteins without the balance of fats will kick you out of ketosis. Ibig sabihin, magpuput on hold po yung fat burning and you will just go back to glucose coming from excess proteins that you've been eating. So, yun po yung importante na mga insights that we can get right now. We are already with attorney for almost 2 hours now. I know, no, it's already too much. Last question, attorney, if you can. At last two questions. First would be your exercise routine right now.
All right. I do yoga every day. About 15 minutes or 20 minutes of yoga, and I do nature walk once in a while, and dancing. That's it. That's all that I do. And I also do rebounder, just because I have so much energy. I don't know what to do with the energy that I have. So I jump on the trampoline at least 100 times a day, and I really enjoy doing that. So like every day I have so much energy to do a lot of things. So sometimes I just do a lot of household chores. It's very therapeutic for me to do that. So I just do things that really give me joy or pleasure, things that I enjoy doing. But I don't have any end goal, and I don't have any formal exercise at all. I don't go to the gym or anything like that.
Thank you so much. And I would like to emphasize then, as what I usually tell my patients, no, after a month, meron kasi akong usual na pinaprepare sa kanila no food na after a month, they are already fat adapted. And the moment that they're already fat adapted, during the first month, meron akong parang sort of fasting schedule na pinapa-follow sa kanila. Parang ideal fasting schedule that they can follow. But after a month, when they already follow up, I usually tell them, as of this point, you no longer need to listen to me. You will just need to listen to yourself. Because once you are already fat adapted, hindi mo na kailangan ng fasting schedule. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-track pa ng inyong kung kakain ka na o hindi pa. You just listen to your body. And as long as you know that you are eating the right foods, you will become appetite corrected. Na hindi nyo na po kailanganin pang planuhin ang mga bagay-bagay. And you will just eat when you are hungry and stop eating when you are already satisfied. And for those po na marami dito, and I think I can see one of them, na nagpo-problema because their menstruations became irregular, okay? After a prolonged low carb and very strict na fasting schedule. So yun yung sinasabi ko, you are already putting yourself in a starvation mode because a little fats, especially sa mga babae, hindi talaga ideal. Yung sobrang wala na talagang fats. Ang babae, kailangan meron niyang kakaunting visceral, kakaunting subcutaneous fats. Those fats, in addition to the ones to your ovaries, will actually make enough estrogen so that you will have a normal hormonal balance including menstruation. So two ways po 'yan. If sobrang dami yung fats ninyo, you can have a PCOS, yung may insulin resistance ka na, magkakakos yan ng hormonal imbalance. But on the other extreme side, if sobrang wala na po kayong fats, you are already somewhat undernourished or malnourished, that can also cause hormonal imbalance. So, dapat meron tayong a little leeway, no? Yung babae, hindi talaga pwede butot balat lang. We have organs in our body that needs a little fat, and that is a normal woman female anatomy. So wag niyong pangarapin na mawala ang lahat ng taba sa inyong katawan. So attorney, you said before no na you've had fertility issues, and I can say siguro that it improved afterwards. So, and before you answer that, yung last question na lang natin so that we will not keep you for so long, I know you are very, very busy as well, is on the part of economy. Gaano po ka-sustainable ang carnivore? Let's say, for example, a normal Filipino worker.
Like I've shown you this one, what I eat in a day. And this is enough to sustain everyone. Actually, even for Dr. Conru, it's enough for him for the entire day. About 400 grams of beef belly. Can you see the price tag? It says here that it is 172 pesos for the whole day. I don't know if it's visible, but the price tag here says that the whole thing is 172 pesos. So, you know, I don't know what your food budget is for a day, but 172 pesos that can last for 1 day or 2 days sometimes because you really feel satiated. Sometimes you eat only once a day or once in 2 days. Because of that, the food cost actually drastically come down. You know, my food budget has really reduced so much from eating several times a day before lunch, dinner, breakfast, and then in between snacks and sometimes even midnight snack. We used to spend way more than this, maybe 2 times or 3 times more than that. So per person, even if it looks like it's all meat, but if that's all that you're eating and nothing else, and you're not drinking anything else, no Starbucks coffee or anything like that, just the meat, and you're totally nourishing your body, and because it's keeping you healthy, then you don't need to take any drugs, medication, no hospitalization bills, and you don't need to pay for health insurance because that is your insurance for health. A healthy diet is the best insurance. So that all adds up. All the other costs that you would otherwise have to spend on if you're on high carbohydrate, typical Filipino diet that includes a lot of pills, multivitamins, supplements, and cost for regular hospitalization bills and insurance fees, which we don't anymore. We've never spent any money on hospitalization. I've never sat within a hospital for the past 5 years. Never needed to, and it all adds up into savings. Actually, we're spending much less now that we are carnivores.
Thank you so much for that. I think it can enlighten a lot talaga, no? Kasi akala natin yung binibilang always yung ano lang yung meat lang. But if you will think of a normal household, kung bumibili nga ng 1 kilong karne para sa buong pamilya, pero yung gulay, yung mga paminta, yung seasoning, yung oil, lahat-lahat na, everything, if you sum it up, it will go way up on the budget talaga. And the rice, the unsustainability of rice that you need to eat every 2 hours, when if you are fueling on carbohydrates, hindi lang po bibilangin ninyo yung kain nyo lang sa agahan, pananghalian at hapunan. Yung mga in-between snacks pa. And when you are fat adapted, like when you're doing full carnivore, I can attest to this, being somewhat generally halos carnivore talaga kami. Yun nga lang, we do not have this parang strict motivation talaga because we've never really had deteriorated our health. So, yung meron kaming 10 to 20% na mga like yung mga low carb treats and all that we eat from time to time. But generally in a day, what we have in our kitchen are mostly just meat, just pure proteins and fats, and it can sustain us. That's why it is very easy for us to do a 2-day fast, a 3-day fast kung gugustuhin namin. And that is the reason why those who are fueling on glucose, dependent on rice, dependent on bread, no, can never really imagine how to live in a day na eating just one meal a day. Sobrang hirap po yan isipin para sa kanila. May nagtatanong if teens are okay with carnivore diet. I know your kid is a teen. Is a teen na po ba o hindi na siya teenager ngayon? And is she also joining you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it again. Sorry.
Okay, kung ano po daw, teens are okay with carnivore?
Teens? Do you say teens?
Teenagers.
Oh, yes, of course. Actually, from infanthood, as soon as a kid is weaned from breast milk, there's this group in Hungary, the TeleMedicine. It's a group of scientists and doctors who prescribe meat and animal fat and organs diet for as a nutritional intervention to treat all diseases. And they recommend this diet of just meat, animal fat, and organs from infancy until adulthood. That's why you know that this is the ideal human diet because it applies universally. It applies to all children, growing children especially need all the nutrition that only meat, animal fat, and organs can provide. It provides the complete and bioavailable nutrition for growing children. So all the more that it is applicable to children, not just teenager, but from infancy.
Attorney, so sobrang daming questions pa, but let's give attorney the rest that she needs din, no? Kawawa naman, nakainom na tuloy ng tubig. Nauhaw na si attorney sa dami ng questions natin. So marami ditong questions, attorney. If you have time, you can browse through our comment section later if you just want to answer them. Or I hope, no, hopefully we can have another episode and this time together with Doc Munich kung pwede nga lang. So before we end, maraming mga questions about athletes and about grass-fed, all the details and all the other itsy-bitsy parts of carnivore. But for now, we don't want to deprive you of your needed night and rest. May tanong lang po ako, last message lang po. Take away. For those who are believers that going full vegetarian is the healthiest option, just like what you had before, but still suffers from unknown issues. Okay? Yung iba, thyroid issues, yung iba, pangangate, bloating, abdominal pain, yung iba, yun nga, tinnitus, ringing of ears, marami akong pasyente niyan as an ENT specialist, no? Yet still suffers from those issues. What was that takeaway from your experience that you'd like to share? From your overall experience from phase 1 of carnivore, from phase 1 of just eating normal Filipino food, going vegetarian, going vegan, and now going carnivore. Ano po yan, attorney?
Well, all I can say is that keep an open mind. Not everything that we've been taught, that we've been led to believe is exactly true. That's what I have experienced. And trust your own experience as well. And I would recommend doing a short elimination diet. If you're really curious about it, just try it for maybe 3 days. Or if you have the willpower to do it, 7 days. But maybe even just 3 days is enough. Just try to eat nothing but meat for those 3 days. Maybe you could just start with ground beef, just a burger, or just a simple cut of a steak, or maybe just a pork chop if you can source a high quality pork. But I think I would recommend first beef because it's the cleanest, the purest, and the least susceptible to contamination, and also the highest in nutrient profile. So I would suggest maybe just eating ground beef or a cut of steak, um, and just eat that by itself, and try to go easy on the seasonings. Maybe just salt it to taste, and then drink nothing else but water, and eat only when you're hungry. And I think a lot in your community are doing intermittent fasting. So try to break your fast with just ground beef or a cut of steak, and do that for 3 days or for however long your intermittent fasting is, and see how you feel. Just observe, look within and observe, and just be open to unlearn everything that you thought you know about nutrition, because most likely 99% of that is not exactly. Well, anyway, it's just my. I don't want to impose my own conclusions, but I invite you to make your own conclusion out of it. I mean, what's 3 days, right? It's in a lifetime of the possibility of enjoying a level of health that you never even know is possible. So sometimes we think that we're okay, we're good. Like Dr. Kondo, he thought that he was okay. That he didn't need to change his diet at all. That he was perfectly fine until he went full carnivore and he experienced a level of health that he never even knew was possible. So I just invite you to do that, and make your own conclusions, and I also want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, this chance to share my experience with everyone.
Thank you so much, Attorney. Maraming salamat po. We are really, really very happy and grateful na pinayagan niyo po yung invite namin. Everybody is so happy. And my Onyx girl would like to say hi as well. So maraming salamat po. I hope to see you again. Let's keep the communications lines open. And we are happy and thankful. Everybody is so happy and grateful for the time that you shared with us and sharing your experience. And right now, yun nga, marami na ngayon mas naging open-minded because of this. And don't worry, this video will be made available forever. Forever talaga, no? Sa YouTube channel namin, Attorney Astra Condu also has a YouTube channel, right? Na Astra Condu, they can just search for you. And nandun po yung kanilang full experience as a family. And I invite you to subscribe as well kasi sobrang cute ni Attorney. Sobrang cute niya sa kanyang mga videos. So, thank you so much, Attorney. Maraming salamat po. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Kami ni Attorney. Picture muna kami. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you. Sige, salamat everybody. Kasi kapag nagpipicture tayo, nagsasmile din yan sila. Bye-bye.